19 odd years after the original came out, Bethesda released the remaster of its exalted game, The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. It's one more popular game under the now huge Microsoft umbrella to get the visual remaster of the game with the original still running in the background. So in the end, we get Unreal Engine 5 visuals with all the original's Oblivion's ridiculous quirks? Oh my, how does that all work? UE5 itself is infamous for the questionable impact on performance, game engine consolidation, and most of all, its endless shader compilation screens. On the flip side, the original Oblivion was known for its somewhat random performance depending on the hardware used. We experienced that many times while testing different hardware in this game. How about we test both games on machines that are close to what's stated as their minimum system requirements for PCs? For the original, we have to satisfy these requirements. These were nothing out of the ordinary back in 2006, as a 3 to 4 year old machine could easily fulfill them. We'll start with the CPU. Here it says 2 GHz Intel Pentium 4 or equivalent processor. We don't have such a Pentium 4, but we do have something better, the equivalent. Enter AMD Athlon XP 2000+. Although clocked at only 1.66 GHz, it easily matches or outperforms a 2 GHz P4. Man, Intel surely has a tough time whenever Oblivion gates open. This socket A CPU has only 256 KB of L2 cache and 70W TDP. For memory, the requirements state 512 MB of RAM. We'll fulfill this with two 256 MB sticks running in dual channel. This should provide us with a bit of an edge over a single 512 MB stick. Our 128 MB DirectX 9 compatible video card is ATI Radeon 9550. This exact model from Asus has a GE suffix, which denotes nothing. The Radeon 9000 series naming convention is all over the place. History repeats itself, it seems. Theoretically, the base 9500 has better specs than a 9550, but we're not sure where it stands in terms of performance. However, our 9550 satisfies all of the granular requirements and is a 128-bit model, which is important to pay attention to when these cards are in question. Is card 3D? Yes, 3D. Card 3D, Direct 3D. 90s early aughts buzzword copyright trademark 3D. This exact card we used in our yet unpublished 2004 budget gaming PC. In the meantime, its fan died. So we swapped it with this aftermarket solution, which will have to connect to the motherboard fan header. Ah yes, the motherboard. All of this will be built on top of the best socket A motherboard we possess. MSI K7N2 Delta 2 Platinum. It utilizes the Enforce 2 Ultra 400 chipset, has dual-channel memory configuration support, albeit done with a weird 3-slot setup. Mobo provides us with 2 SATA ports, which will come in handy, and of course 8GB slot for our graphics card. It took us time to notice that our chipset fan is missing, so we'll supplement it with this 8cm Arctic fan. Not the perfect fit, but it'll do its job. It's a beautiful board, with its black PCB and colorful components. It looks fun. Shame they don't make them anymore like this. The requirements state 4.6 GB of storage space, although more with all of the DLCs included. A 120 GB SSD as a boot drive over a SATA connector will satisfy all of our needs nicely. Once again, we're aware that the SSD would not be a part of a typical minimum specs machine in 2006, but trust us when we say that the handicap of a geriatric HDD is not at all needed here. Sound card, yes? Yes. DVD-ROM? Actually no. We'll be using the GOG version of the game, so no discs are necessary. So here's the complete machine with all the relevant parts. Here is how it compares to the original minimum system requirements. To gauge Oblivion's performance of our machines, we'll test it in 3 different scenarios. The first one is in the very first dungeon you encounter as you leave prison. Alien Ruin Wolverine. It's populated by a group of bandits, so dispatching them would be part of each run. The second scenario is in the open world, on a path that leads to the city of Coral. It starts on a crossroads, and if you look to your left side, you can see the Imperial City. We'll call it the Imperial City View Benchmark. The third scenario is running through the city of Anvil. This is the test we conduct each time we usually measure the performance in Oblivion. It's also the most taxing test of the 3. Let's start with the Wolverine test. Here, in an enclosed area, our Min-Spec machine manages to churn out a playable frame rate. On the low preset, of course, where it doesn't look very enticing. Now you have to understand, back then 30 plus FPS with 20 FPS lows was considered very playable. As we go to the higher presets, the performance drops severely. During our Imperial City view walk, we couldn't see much of the titular city, and our open world stuttering proved to be much annoying. It can be suffered through, but for a game considered very beautiful at the time, this is a sacrilege. Finally, during our standard Anvil City run, performance was, while stable, much lower. It is almost there with playable performance, and it doesn't feel too bad, although there is some unavoidable artifacting as well. Once again, with the higher presets, our performance goes to Oblivion. Not much impressive. Perhaps we can reconsider CPU requirements, and instead of an equivalent AMD CPU, we take one that is clocked at 2 GHz. So here we have Athlon XP 2400 Plus, clocked at 2 GHz with the same cache and everything else as our Athlon 2000 Plus. In Wolverine, we only gain some performance at a low preset, while the higher preset performance stays the same. At the spot where it could make the most impact, the Imperial City View benchmark, our 2400 Plus was unstable. We were unable to finish a single run without the whole machine freezing up. In Anvil Run, we're almost there with the playable performance. Technically, we can satisfy the original recommended requirements by upgrading this machine. It is a bit of a malicious comply, as it will still be slightly weaker than what the intent was here. For the CPU, we'll use the Athlon XP 3000 Plus, clocked at mere 2.1 GHz, and double the L2 cache compared to the previous CPUs. We'll bump the memory by using two 512 MB sticks for a total of 1 GB in dual channel. As for the graphics card, we'll use the NVIDIA GeForce 6800 LE AGP edition. It is technically a GeForce 6800 and has 128 MB of VRAM. Now we've arrived in the playable territory for the medium preset, except for the large open areas like our Imperial City View benchmark, where our recommended machine stumbles and stutters. This seems to be due to CPU limitation more than the GPU, as we'll see what happens when such a limitation is removed. Very high preset is almost achievable in smaller closed areas, so you could probably get away with a combination of medium and high settings and this machine. Besides Oblivion, we ran a few synthetic benchmarks to figure out the relative performance of these parts. Here are the results. Let's fast forward 19 years and check the Oblivion Remaster minimum system requirements. In a similar vein to the original, these are easily fulfillable by a 3 to 4 year old machine. We tried to find AMD Ryzen 5 2600X exactly, but we couldn't borrow it, nor find it for cheap. So we'll go with the next best thing, Ryzen 5 1600AF. Its name is a bit misleading, as this chip is actually from the Pinnacle Ridge, or Zen Plus generation of Ryzen CPUs, which makes it the same generation as our target 2600X. This CPU is a legendary sub $100 budget offering, making it a great deal back in the day. It still holds up fairly well, even with the recent games. With a bit of overclock, we'll almost reach the spec of a better chip, and hopefully measure similar performance. Min-Specs say that we need 16 GB of system memory. We'll accommodate that requirement by running two 8GB Kingston Fury DDR4 3200 MHz sticks in dual channel. DOCP, AMD's XMP equivalent for AM4, is enabled, so the memory will run at annotated speed. We underspec our CPU a bit, so we'll overspec our GPU a bit. Instead of the regular AMD Radeon RX 5700, we have borrowed the Radeon RX 5700 XT. The most important part is that 8GB of VRAM is required, as the game performance below that can be quite atrocious. Radeon RX 5000 series from a few years back didn't have high-end parts, so this card was the best offering from AMD at the time. Quite similar to the confusingly named RX 9070 today. And in retrospect, especially considering shortages and exorbitant prices that are now the new normal, what a purchase it was. As we do aim to overclock our CPU, we'll use a somewhat better motherboard than just any B450 or B550 board. But in truth, this MSI MPG B550 Gaming Plus is more style than substance, as we barely managed to overclock our CPU to our satisfaction. Not to mention, MSI BIOS is so convoluted and confusing, it is not recommended for use by any user experience designers, for their own health reasons. Other than that, everything worked as intended. Not great, but not terrible either. It seems we don't need the sound card anymore. A shame, since we do have one on the motherboard sitting there, doing nothing. For storage, we'll use this NVMe Kingston 2TB for both boot drive and as a games and benchmark storage. We recommend avoiding purchasing these, as this drive easily overheats, and it's fairly slow even without that. So here's the complete machine with all the relevant parts. Before we see how this machine performs in Oblivion Remaster, let's take a look at how it handles the original, because why not? These results are a bit ridiculous, but if you take a closer look, they are not that impressive. This is a 19-year-old game we are talking about, and this machine doesn't manage to crack 200 FPS and 1080p. To be fair, this is the best you can get from the old Oblivion, as some new machines started like hell while running it. All of that is a testament to how wonderfully terrible the old Oblivion performance was. And now, let's take a look at how the newer machine handles our Wolverine benchmark in the remaster. We conducted all of the tests in 3 resolutions, 720p, 1080p, and 1440p. But this being a minimum system requirements machine, we'll focus mostly on the 1080p resolution. By default, when selecting the preset, depending on your selection, resolution scaling is applied. We will keep the resolution scaling at 100%, because we don't care if a game is playable at 540p. As you can see, the 1080p Wolverine performance is excellent, breaking 60 FPS on the high preset. By abiding to the 30-20 playable rule, 1440p high preset is also considered playable, up to the high preset. Lack of stuttering due to Wolverine being in a closed area is a significant factor here. We get some lower performance in our Imperial City View benchmark. Since this is an open world benchmark, stuttering is quite present here. This is the largest pain point with the Oblivion Remaster, as it can get extremely annoying. Here, we don't have it that bad, and it doesn't impede too much on the gameplay experience, but it does highly affect the 1% low results. 1440p is not recommended at all due to the results in this benchmark. In the Anvil City run, the performance is rather satisfying. 1440p can be considered only on the low preset, and therefore not recommended. We tried recreating the game state so it matches the original as much as possible, but no matter how much we waited, we couldn't get that guard to go behind that cathedral. It's essential to state that initially, we had tremendous issues conducting Oblivion Remastered testing in 1080p and 1440p. The strange part is that while running the game in 720p, we had no observable issues. Once we raised the resolution to 1080p, after running the game for a few seconds, the game would instantly shut down the whole PC. The issue is not heat related, nor is the power problem, as we ran more than sufficient power supply. The owner of this card noticed the same problem occurs consistently in every Unreal Engine 5 game. AMD pushed this card too much it seems, and by default, its instability can show up as such. Our solution to this issue was to auto-undervolt this GPU in the AMD Adrenalin software. By doing so, the card ran stable with no discernible impact on the performance. Besides Oblivion, we ran benchmarks in 2 more games. In the first game, Cyberpunk 2077, the performance is amazing, breaking 60 FPS on the Ultra preset, which makes the Oblivion Remaster much more performance taxing than even Cyberpunk. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which is a game in the Unreal Engine 4, it runs great. We can argue that this game hardly looks better than Cyberpunk, and yet it has a similar performance. Unreal Engine 5 seems to only make this problem worse, and it's a damn shame that CD Projekt Red decided to swap its Red engine for Unreal. We also ran some synthetic benchmarks with this machine. Here are the results. There is much discourse online on how terribly optimized the Oblivion Remaster is. Truth lingers in those sentiments, as there is real, tangible overhead from UE5. The performance we got with the Oblivion Remaster Min-Spec machine is amazing, and compared to the original, everything is better optimized. Even the remaster. What's also notable is how good still are all the Ryzen's and Radeon 5700 cards. The ones that we used are both 6-year-old parts, and they are performing in the newest, not well optimized game like it was nothing. If only graphics cards were more affordable, this would be a golden era of budget PC gaming. This, supposed to be a small project, was much more complex and fun than expected. Hopefully, you had fun as well, and don't forget to
close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
the shape of the future, the fate of the Empire. These things now belong to you.